Hey everybody, this is Lonnie Sweet from the Sweet Management Group, and you are either listening to or watching the Never Sell Ice to Eskimos podcast, where we talk to sales executives from the culinary, sports, general business, and entertainment worlds about their journey, about being a salesperson in this industry and what it took to get to where they are today. So whether you're listening in your earbuds, you're sitting in front of your computer, I appreciate you stopping by and hope you enjoy. All right. Hello everybody. My name is Lonnie Sweet. I'm the CEO of Sweet Management Group, formerly the Connect Group, and this is the Never Sell Ice to Eskimos podcast. As usual, I've got a good friend of mine on with me today. His name is Bret Werner. He is a good-looking man. He is in Rhode Island right now at his summer house, so I appreciate the time. He is the president of MikeWorldWide, or otherly known as MWW. They're one of the global leaders from a PR agency perspective across the world, and they're actually a partner of ours in one of our other ventures. I've known Bret for a long, long time, back to the Taylor days, back to, I don't know, so much. One of the things, and Bret, we'll get into a little bit more, one of the things I've loved about Bret over the years is not only is he a leader, meaning running an organization as the president, he's built a couple and sold a few. He always seems to be, like, in addition to that, selling and actively, like, part of one of the major roles, I think, Bret, correct me if I'm wrong, has always been like going out hunting and finding new business. So I'm super excited to just kind of talk to you about that journey. And for me also, like, how do you train other people to do it? So anyway, I appreciate your time today, bud.
Lonnie, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I love the idea and I appreciate the kind words.
So do this. Let's start off by kind of, I think I gave a quick little intro, just a little bio and kind of who you are and where you've been and what you're doing, and maybe something on MikeWorldWide too.
Absolutely. So Bret Werner, been with MWW, an independent public relations company, for 6.5 years. We are a modern day communications company, traditional brand building, corporate, crisis, digital, social, SEO, really run the gamut, and some paid. Been here for 6.5 years. Love the independent agency feel and how we operate. Probably goes a lot into what we'll talk about today, that DNA of selling and always having to be selling. Prior to the 6.5 years here, I started my own agency called Catalyst. Ran that for 7 years, and then we sold it to IMG, which eventually became Endeavor. Stayed there for 3 years, and then where I met Lonnie, I started my career at Taylor, another small independent company. We grew that over my 13-year tenure there. Bought the company from Alan Taylor. So 3 agency stops in my career, and I loved every minute of it. But it has taught me how to sell, because if I didn't bring in clients, we didn't eat, basically. So it was
Right.
good training ground. So
you know what I think is also cool about your position is you're on both sides of the spectrum. You're out selling, and then you're actually being sold too. I mean, the reality, what we really should be telling people, is the reason why we know each other is I've been trying to get business from you for 20 plus years, right? Trying to hawk my athletes or hawk my chefs and trying to get business from you. So you're on both sides of it, right? And always have been. Let me just ask you a basic question. I actually haven't asked people this before, and I've been meaning to. I just kind of keep forgetting. What is it? What's like being in sales, and what does, like, the word sales guy or salesperson kind of mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the sales person, I'm in the communications business, has a negative connotation. Let's be honest. It's actually
Right.
a title I shy away from and sort of encourage people, because your defense mechanisms go up if I see chief revenue officer, salesperson. But I think, well, we've had discussions and we have known each other for a long, long time. When I talk to you, it's not a sales, it's how do we make something together, right?
Right.
In the height of the pandemic, I'm calling you and I'm like, hey, I need to do some things with chefs. How do we do this? Because I haven't done a lot of things over Zoom in day one of the pandemic, and
Right.
we made it happen, right? So it is about solutions. It's very cliche, but the people who I take calls from all the time are solutions oriented people. Now I have to service a lot of clients, so I'm always wanting to talk to people like, what's new? What's the latest trend you're working on? What's the hot new talent? What are you seeing in the marketplace? Because in my head, I'm trying to marry that up. Like, how can that help my client? So again, cliche, it's not sales, it's solution or orientated results.
I agree with you, right? I have to be honest. I get kind of pissed off by that answer, right? I get it and I appreciate it, but the reality is, at some point in our evolution of human beings, right, we got to
Right.
realize that like salespeople are the most important component to every organization. I always think, and somebody corrected me recently, and I'm glad that she did. There's only really two types of people in an organization, right? There's a revenue generator and there's an expense center. That's it.
Right.
Without the revenue generator, there is no opportunity to have an expense center. And so, like, why can't we just get past the fact that nobody's selling door-to-door shit anymore? At least most people aren't. Nobody's
Right.
selling encyclopedias the same way that they used to. Most people are not knocking on your door selling you a washer, dryer, or whatever it may be. Like, isn't it just okay to say, like, you're in sales?
It is, but it's how it's perceived in the world, and if that's right or wrong, that's just reality. And the truth is, if you're a salesperson, you love it, and you're like, shouldn't everyone be salespeople? What the hell's wrong with this?
Right.
And if you're
Right.
not, you're like, stop fucking bothering me. Am I allowed to curse on this
Uh,
thing? I'm not sure, but
you
I
can
just
curse
think
on this, yes.
it's a different mentality, and sales to me is a lot about people that love it and people that don't want to do it, and you rarely find anything in the middle. And I think you need everything in an agency business. Um, I need client service people, I need strategists, I need salespeople, I need creatives, I need a mix of everything. But if I'm selling a new client, or I'm selling an idea, or if I'm selling a media person a story idea, I'm selling in every aspect of the job.
Yeah. You think you were naturally born to do that, like on the sales side? Because again, I think what's interesting about you is you're running a big organization. MWW is independent. That's cool. But you're also a globally independent agency. You're not a small shop that's just in New York City or across the country. I mean, we're working together out of your LA office. You've got offices all over the country. You're running an organization, but correct me if I'm wrong, you're still like selling. Like, do you find yourself drawn to it?
Absolutely. And we are, Michael has built a great company over 35 plus years where we have a halo brand, and things come to us. But I always think we're selling proactively or reactively. And if you're only relying on what I call over the transom sales, you're not maximizing your capability.
Yeah.
So I think you got to balance both of them. And I always say, like, part of my discipline each day is, am I carving out 15 to 30 minutes to proactively sell? A sell could be, hey, I'm writing a collateral piece of material that I want to publish. It could be following up with someone who it didn't go our way a year ago. It could be a cold call. It could be touching base with a stakeholder. But it's so easy to get just engulfed by the day to day. And you're like, I'm not proactively selling. And 3 months from now, I'm going to regret that. I may not regret it tomorrow, but I will 3 months from now.
You carve that out in your calendar every day? Like, you actually have a time in there that you do that?
I try to, and sometimes it's hard, I'll be honest. But
Yeah.
again, I'm just always inquisitive. Like, what are people up to? What's this person up to? I
Yeah.
saw Jane Smith switch jobs. Let me check in with her. So,
Yeah.
and it sometimes it leads to new business, sometimes it leads to new talent, sometimes it leads to something I was just completely unaware of. I think it goes into this sort of good salespeople are just really curious individuals. I always find they're also pretty persistent, but I'm always like, hey, what's going on there? What's happening there? And
Yeah.
just my natural curiosity gets the best of me.
Right. How's that evolved over the years? Right. I've people listen to these other podcasts. They've heard me kind of say that I think I've evolved a lot. Right. Like, I'm
Yeah.
still very much a hard sales guy. I'll pick up the phone and say, "Bro, what the fuck do you got for me today, man?"
Right.
Now, I've also laid 25 years of groundwork with you where I can actually pick up the phone and do that. And so,
Sure.
but naturally, I've evolved over the years where I've gotten softer because I've recognized it. Right. Because not everybody wants an in your face sales guy. How have you evolved over the years? Your style over the years?
I think it's more in the approach, and I'd still say, yeah, I don't always understand your weakness. So I love the sales process. I love the chase. It's sort of fun and exhilarating, and but I think I'm way more disciplined to see where there's an opportunity, or see that, hey, is this worth the effort and energy, basically. So I'm definitely more disciplined there. I wouldn't say I'm great at it always, because once you sort of like pull off the major upset and get the win, you're like, I can do this every time, so but getting a little disciplined, has helped me, because goes back to that, hey, am I carving out that 15 to 30 minutes? Like, it comes down to time. There's just so limited time in the day. I'm much more disciplined. I have a very good understanding in our organization of what people are great at. So I could be like, here's the lead, but I'm not the person to drive this, let me make an introduction. So I
Right.
understand people's strengths and weaknesses and where to pass things through. But I honestly believe in my heart of hearts of like, I'm bringing a great solution to a brand partner that needs something. So
Yeah. How do you teach that to the next generation? Like that's the one thing that I've had a real challenge with over the years is training other people and finding other people. And for me personally, it's very hard to communicate what I do from like how to teach sales is very hard for me. It's part of the reason why I'm doing this podcast is because I'm intrigued by the way other people are doing, and I think it's easy for me to teach people when I'm having a conversation with friends. But like, can you teach that? How do you teach that?
It's a great question. I'm always asking people like, what's the greatest sales class you've ever taken or thing you've ever read? Because I'm always inquisitive to learn
Yeah.
more and get better at what I do. I do believe it's something you're born with, but can be taught. But if you're not born with a certain desired DNA, it's very hard to teach. But I do teach everyone in our company is everyone is a salesperson to some degree. Everyone's going to be at a barbecue where they're going to bump into a friend or a cousin and they're going to ask you what you do. And I actually have an example of this where the person knew our elevator speech, knew enough to pique someone's interest and bring in the right people, and we closed a piece of business. So everyone has to have a foundation. But I do think you need a certain DNA, and it's rare that you have to be able to understand the word no, because even if you're great at sales, you're going to hear no a lot more than yes. And you have to be a little resilient because anyone can be aggressive on the first three, proactive outreaches, but after it hasn't gone your way for a while, you still have to have that sort of innate confidence to say, I know what I'm doing is a solution. I just have to find the right person.
Yeah, it's interesting. It is hard, right? And I would love for it to be like just like a handbook that you can give to somebody. I do think that you inevitably you need to have that. I don't think it's will. It's just like first off, there's an awesome energy to closing deals, right? Like there
Yeah.
really is something amazing about the ability to be able to just to close a piece of business and generate the revenue, and I hope celebrate a win real quickly, right? I don't do that well enough, but try to find people, especially in today's day and age, and I guess I should follow up that question. Also, not always being in the office, like, are you finding it harder for people? Again, I don't know how much you guys are in the office. I know you are a lot as well, but like your salespeople, are they in office? Is it harder being away from each other so they don't have a chance to actually learn from you and be in a room with you and kind of sit on calls with you?
Yeah, so we don't have a sales team in our organization, but I will say that uh, the pandemic and the new environment, I think naturally people, especially in my industry, in the public relations industry, are natural people. People interaction. They talk a lot. We find things at events. We go to conferences. We're part of boards, and that is harder, and it's definitely harder in a Zoom. So I think that part of that organic sales effort has been more difficult. I know I like to do that. Like I
Yeah.
went to an industry awards banquet 6 weeks ago, happened to bump into someone that happened to trigger a phone call, which happened to result in a piece of business. But it is like what I call hanging around the hoop. You just have to be omnipresent in front of whoever you want to do business with, because there's nothing you're going to probably do that one particular time that's going to say, I want to go hire Lonnie. But the fifth time, the sixth time, it's like, okay, Lonnie, I see him everywhere. He's top of mind. I got to do something with him. It's a repetition. We're inundated by information every day. You have to have a lot of touch points.
And just to kind of build off that, it's not shitty repetition, right? Like I can't tell you how many times I get LinkedIn, emails from people that clearly just went to LinkedIn because it says the Connect Group, a lifestyle agency. It's not shitty reconnections. It may just be, and this is what I do, pinging somebody to say, "What's up, man? Hope you had a great summer. Just wanted to say hello."
Exactly. And that's where it goes back to this. I know the solution based, like there is no cold email I can ever recall that I bought something from them. But it is
Right.
someone saying, hey, I saw you did this, or here's an article I wrote, I wanted to share with you. I'm like, oh, that's an interesting perspective. Or, and I do also believe it all comes full circle. I have countless times people call me up, ask me for advice. Like, I'm not going to charge them for that. Or, I make an introduction. The world just comes full circle in my view. And I always just want to help people and it has paid dividends through and through. But it's sort of where I see your initial question was, how do you teach this, right? So I think there are these innate qualities that have been around for generations: persistence, inability to sort of lose your confidence, right? Those are innate skills that have been around forever. Then there's modern technology of like, hey, you get a lot smarter of like, who is this person? What are their interests? What are their circles of influence? And using that blend of sort of old school, new school is sort of the winning combination. I find the younger generation hides behind technology a little bit. They don't pick up the phone. They don't get to know people. So you miss those little cues of like, hey, Lonnie's passion is about culinary. I better brush up on culinary before I talk to him. At the same time, I could just, hang on the phone all day and not read, more about your company or
Right.
what you're up to, and study the research. So that's like the magic, I think.
Yeah, there's so much information out there that it's so much easier today to find out information about Bret, where you went to college, the fact that went to URI, the fact that you live
Yeah.
in New Jersey, how many kids. There's so much. Like, there's so much information you can do to spark like a conversation. Like I have a 617 cell phone number for a reason. It's the only number I've ever had, but I have Massachusetts pride. But I can't tell you how many times I've gotten on the phone with people and be like, "Oh, you got a 508?" Or somebody says to me, "Oh, you're from Boston?" And it's such an easy icebreaker to say, "No, I live in New Jersey, but I'm from Boston. Where are you from?" Right.
Right.
And to be able to break down that barrier like in a flash, I think that to me is where I think you're either born with it or you're not, right? Like being able to kind of break somebody down and get them on a level that's equal to you, or at least they feel comfortable is for me, I always think that's a really great tool to kind of start a conversation.
No, like you said, where you're from, tell me about your kids, tell me more about what you do for work. That's a 10-minute conversation right there. But
Right.
it's a natural curiosity. I'll go back to this theme of like, hey, I'm standing next to the person in the grocery store. I'm sort of like, hey, what do you think of that chicken you just bought there? And
Right.
next thing you know, you're in a conversation. But it is a curiosity. But for me, I do think it's part of my DNA, but I was really fortunate. I grew up, my mom, my dad, my stepmother, who's one of the best salespeople I ever met, all own their own business. So I always watched them in action of like, hey, they always had to go find their next client, and they did do great work for them. Don't get me wrong, but I've seen them on the highs, and I've seen like when I was a senior in high school during a recession when they were struggling, to find that next client, and that sticks with you as a kid, like if you realize it or not, of like, okay, you always got to go find that next client. When you have them, you got to take care of them because they may not be there one day. So
Yeah.
there's always a little sense of fear, no matter how successful you are, of like, oh, if I don't do a great job here, they're all going to leave tomorrow, or I
I
got to go
call it
find
the
that next great client. Yeah.
I call it the manic depressive feeling of a business owner, right? Like there's mornings, and I'm 14 years into this business and I
You're right.
still feel that way. I wake up some mornings, I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? I can't believe I have to fucking go do this. The next morning I wake up, I'm like, let's fucking do this. This is the greatest thing in the world. I couldn't imagine doing anything else. And for 14 years, it's been like this, right? And I feel the fear, right? I think fear is such an amazing sales tool, right? Like the fear of not making payroll, the fear of not growing, the fear of not delivering for a client, the fear, like for me personally, that's driven me a lot over the years. I don't know if everybody else feels the same way or not.
No, I agree. I mean, Andy Grove, the great founder of Intel, said, only the paranoid survive. And this is one of the greatest leaders of our time, right?
Right.
And, and that's sort of like you can flip it and say, okay, you can sell that way too. And there's a lot of data out there that when you lead with solving the business problem, hey, you're brand X and you have a brand perception problem with stakeholders in Washington, D.C., like, here's how we can fix it. Like, someone's going to listen to you. They may not
Yeah.
agree with you, but they're going to listen. So a lot of data out there about, selling with fear solutions, like, is always a more productive way.
Yeah. What do you do for, what do you talked about a little bit before, just about reading and gathering information. What do you do for personal growth?
I'm always trying to challenge myself a little bit. I used to be an incredible reader. That's probably dissipated over long form reading has probably dissipated thanks to social media and the internet.
Right.
Um, but I've taken within the
Like
last few
sales
years
books reading?
a lot of
Like, what did you used
business
to read?
books. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was at the library yesterday, finding a new book.
Were you the only
And
person in the last 4 years that's been to a library?
I still
Nobody goes
my
to the library anymore.
I know no one goes to the library. It's a treasure in my view. My kids love the library, and
Great.
not that I don't buy books, but sometimes just like walking the library, I find sort of interesting. But I'm always looking. At this stage, I like classes. I took a Harvard Business an HBX class in the last 2 years. I thought was really challenging. It was on strategy. I thought that was pretty intriguing. For me, it's like working the network of just sitting down with people like you, Lonnie, and be like, hey, what's going on in your world? Like, how do you deal with this? Like, I'm fortunate enough at this stage in my career, either through the health of the MWW brand, to get exposed to a lot of people and like what I'll call a fireside chat, even though it's rarely over a fire, but of just like talking to people, is really insightful. And I do find I'm always amazed at how open people are with me, of just like, hey, I give them something, they give me like twice as much back. I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
thank you.
Well, I think that's also about you. I mean, the reality is, right? Like, you're easy to talk to, and I think everybody knows you're coming from a good place. And I also goes back to that curiosity. I'm sure you're not
Right.
asking hard questions that you're asking for, their numbers. You're genuinely curious about something.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just like,
Yeah.
hey, what challenge? And what's funny is of the last 20 plus months, we've all faced the same exact challenges, right?
Yeah.
As a business owner, if you're in any type of business, you've had labor issues, you've had supply chain issues, like you've had all the same exact problems, basically,
Yeah.
which is rare. It never happened before in our lifetime. So it's intriguing. But and then you had sales problems at some point because unless you were in a very particular industry, it all dried up for a while.
Yeah. It did.
So it was interesting.
So I've asked this question a bunch of times of people, and I'm curious about from you, especially because you've built businesses and sold businesses, and you've been in the trenches, and I know your back history. You got some like moments where I don't know, I keep on saying like mistakes that people have made, right? And I don't know if that's the right way to phrase it, but have there been instances in your career where you're like, man, that was a fucking punch to the head, and I wish I didn't do that, or I took something really amazing or a learning experience, but it felt really crappy. Like, for me, that was 50-yard lounge, right? Like, 50
Right.
yard lounge to me was the biggest punch in my gut I've ever had in my life. I was in a very, very dark place for a very long time, kind of thinking about that. It almost destroyed my business. Coming
Wow.
out of it now, it might have been the best thing that ever happened to me from a learnings perspective, right? You have things that you've kind of done that you've stepped back to, and I've learned so much from that moment.
Yeah, I mean, there's always listen, if you haven't had those key learning moments, you haven't taken enough swings, right?
Right.
That's simple. But it can be as simplistic of year two of starting an agency. We were on a roll, and I was like, I don't need to be the sales guy. I don't need to be the client service guy. I can be the strategist and the brand guy. And next thing you know, like we're getting fired by a key client, and I missed the indicators. So that was a big wake up of like, hey, never get too far removed from your clients or the
Right.
revenue pipeline, because that's the lifeblood in an agency world. So that was a pretty early on indicator for me. Um, but it's like like all of these, like it just made me even more confident. And I use confident in a different word. I like to be sort of confident but humble, right? Hey, I believe in what I'm selling. I believe what I'm doing. I'm not a flashy person. I don't want to be that individual. But I'm like, man, we just navigated through a pandemic successfully. Like, what can't we accomplish? So I
Right.
sort of like look at things through those lens. And a lot of the great CEOs or senior leaders I've worked with, they've had these traumatic events, and you read a lot about this of the leaders who lost a parent at an early stage of life or overcame a disease or had a near death experience. Like the business part is easy after that. And
Right.
so I look at the pandemic like that. I'm like, why am I worried about cold calling this CCO or CMO? Like, that's what are they going to hang up on me? What's the big deal? Or sending them something.
Right.
So
Right.
it just develops a sense of fearlessness. And that's what I love about the DNA of MWW is like, from the founder down, there's that sense of fearlessness, not cocky, but fearlessness of, hey, we can get this done for you.
I mean, don't forget, you also went through 2008, right? I mean, the reality is
Right.
I started my company, I don't know, 3 months before it was a global meltdown in 2008. Pandemic was bad. Everybody seems to forget that, like, 2008 was pretty fucking bad as well. Like, it was a bad stretch during that period of time too. The resiliency, it's an interesting way of kind of thinking about it, and confidence. God, that's a tough one at times, right? Like, even just getting the confidence to pick up the phone, and you're right. Pandemic happened. We're all still standing here. Your business is still here. My business is still here. We're both thriving. Like, what's the worst thing that can happen?
Yeah, that's definitely my mentality. And we'll have harder times ahead. Eventually it's all cyclical. You learn that real quick. But it does go back. I think your person who said the rev generators and the non-rev generators, and I do think you need both, but you can't ever lose sight of being fearless to go create the next opportunity, because once it's too meek, it takes a while to get back up. It's got to constantly be on, and it takes discipline to say every day, what am I trying to create as the next opportunity? Now, it could be for a current client or a new client, but you always want to create something and build on the next layer. So that's the discipline that I think you need, along with the fearlessness.
What's next for you guys? What's next for you? What's next for MWW? Like, where's the growth? How do you guys get new business? And listen, I'll also start off by saying we've loved working with you guys, right? Like,
well,
we hired MWW for a project we're doing with Ludo. I knew from the first 5 minutes we had our conversation, you guys were vastly different than every other agency we were talking to. And listen, go back to our conversation. I picked up the phone and called you for advice about what other agencies to talk to. Like, that was the start of our conversation. It's like, hey, Bret, I know this probably isn't for you guys, right? Because maybe you're a little bit too big. Like, who else can you introduce me to? The only reason I did that is because we've had this relationship and we haven't touched each other. Sorry, that was wrong. We haven't been in contact 5 times. It's been a couple thousand times, right? And I had the trust to call you. So
yeah,
you guys are pretty awesome at that.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. And listen, there are other good agencies out there. You always have to acknowledge that. But what's next for MWW is, we've, by the time this is published, we'll have announced we've hired a new head of digital. Her name is Emily Dubin. There's a whole world out there on Web3 and what's our lane there. So our clients are asking, it's going to open up all new opportunities. There'll be new agencies that are born with these capabilities, and there'll be some that'll die on the vine because they can't harness them. So the digital space is always a growth area for us. It's where we need to be. No matter what audience you're chasing, it's got to be part of the equation. And if we apply an earned lens to that, like, we're going to continue to grow and expand. But we're lucky we've added some great management in technology in our West Coast office. So we're really just fueling support under that leadership. But we're looking to grow and expand, and maybe make some acquisitions in due time. But we're patient. Business is very healthy right now, and just really, really inquisitive what the future has, especially in the world of digital.
God, that Web3 stuff is coming, and it's coming fast, and it's a wild, wild west that I don't think people really understand what it means yet. The potential is massive. It's exciting, like really, really exciting to think about.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think there's going to be so much trial. And to me, trial is the easiest way to get long-term clients. Instead of going in there and going for the huge kill, like, you're going to really get into a big brand by saying, hey, my expertise is in this niche lane, or it's crisis communications, it's Web3, it's SEO, it's influencer marketing. Give us a try on something. And then that trial gets into many other things if you do it right.
Yeah. Well, listen, dude, I appreciate you. I appreciate your friendship. I appreciate you taking the time today. And just thank you. I'm grateful for our friendship. I'm grateful for the business friendship and the personal friendship. Well, thank you.
Yeah, Lonnie, and I commend you. I think you built the business. That's hard to do. People don't realize how difficult, and congratulations to everything you've created. And I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, but enjoy Newport. Go hit some balls on the grass courts over the tennis hall field.
All right, my friend. I will be in touch.
Have a great one. Talk to you.
Thank you.
Bye.